much better this week. Get to play with my magnets. Everything's all.
Right. Okay, guys. Good evening to everyone who's here. As always, I'm going to leave you with the Kahoot. Yeah, get joining so that we have time, or we can make sure that we start on time. Again, as always, no inappropriate names. You will just get kicked out. But I hope you've all had a nice week, and we'll make a start at the official time of 1:15. Just thought I'd let you guys get on. Okay, right. Let's make a start. Um, there's only 8 people in the game, and there's 15 people on. So I'll give you another 30 seconds if you want to join. You've just joined the session. There's our pin. There's our QR code. I'll give you 30 seconds. How's everyone's week been? Anyone do anything exciting you want to share? Any tests or anything? Anyone wants to share? Right. Okay. I can see some more people getting on now. Nice. We're almost up to our full number. Let's make a start. So these are questions based on what we did last week. We started to look at non-fiction writing, specifically to do with bias and things like that. Could we do different modes? You know what? I should start making them a different mode, shouldn't I? I'll think about it for the future. Right, let's make a start. Revision for last week then. Oh, let me turn on the sound as well. Okay, what is purpose? Okay, I might start skipping them so that we don't spend too long on this today. I realize it's quite a hefty amount of time. Okay, it is the reason for which a text is created. So last week we looked at different types of purposes. We looked at like to entertain, to inform, to advocate, to persuade. There's a reason. It's like the goal you want to get out of your writing. Okay, what is audience, did we say? Okay, I'm gonna start skipping. I'm gonna skip in two, one. Nice. Okay, everyone. Yeah, it's the people that the text is aimed at. So we discussed last week, you can have various audiences. You could divide it by age. So it could be like kids, teenagers, young adults, adults, elderly, that kind of thing. Or it could be by subgroups of people. So people who like cycling, people who like eating burgers, that sort of thing. What is form? And we're going to think about this a little bit more today. Okay. How the text is presented is correct. And we're going to explore various types of form today, or at least begin to explore some of them. Okay, what is the purpose of this text you're about to see? So sharing the space in the library is easy. Everyone knows that we can keep low voices so others can do their work. What are the other rules? And it gives you the rules. So skip into one. Okay, so to inform what the students should do in the library is correct. The purpose is to inform. People won't entertain. I mean, it contained rules, so I guess less so entertainment. What slash who is the audience for this text? So we've got a uniform poster here. Think about who would be wearing uniform, especially this kind. Okay, I'm gonna skip from three to one. Yeah, school students. It told us in the picture that it was like school, girls' school trousers. So yes, it's the people wearing the uniform, but also the people who are buying the uniform, which is the parents. Okay. What is the form of this text? How is it presented, in other words? Mhm. Think about what information you've been given. You've got a date, you've got a dear, you've got an ending. Let's skip and yeah, 10 seconds. One. Hey, it is a letter. Most of you got that. I'm glad. Okay. What is the purpose of this text, do you think? You've got a poster about different breeds of German dogs. Is it to inform? Is it to let people know? Is it to argue? Or is it to entertain? Think about the information you've been given. Yeah, skip when it gets to 10 seconds. Okay. It's to let people know what types of German dogs there are. It's not to argue because there wasn't really any argument on the poster. Possibly to entertain because I guess if you're interested in that kind of thing. And it wasn't the Asian dogs because it told us it was German dogs. Okay, what is the form of this text? So same one. Is it an essay, an article, a poster, or a letter? Okay, nice clean sweep on this one. It is a poster. Okay, what is the purpose of this text? Again, we've got a poster. It says think green. Okay, let's skip when we get to 10. It is to stop global warming, just encourage people to um, keep the trees alive. There's nothing about there in vegetables. There's nothing about there about woods, and there was nothing on there about cutting down trees. So it had to be global warming. Okay, true or false? A text can only be made for one audience. 50-50 on this one. Take your pick. Okay, just skip into one. It is false. So you can give two separate audiences the same text. I mean, it might be that a text is applicable to teenagers, but it might be applicable to all sorts of teenagers, ones who like a certain thing, ones who don't like a certain thing. Yeah, you can give a text to many people. Think about like Netflix shows, things like Stranger Things. You don't have to be a certain age to watch that show. It's applicable to a wide range of people. What is the purpose of this text in one word? Now, it's not necessarily a text, more of a I don't want to give it away. Is it inform, instruct, argue, or entertain? Why do we have these signs? Hey, yeah, I'd allow either inform or instruct. It tells you to stop. So it's an instruction, but it also is informing you also kind of the danger of not stopping by it being read in a big warning. Okay, what is the purpose of this image? Again, in one word. Is it to entertain, to inform, to advocate, or to persuade? It is to entertain. Yeah, there's nothing in there about information or trying to persuade you to do anything. It was simply just a picture of a dog there to entertain. Okay, who is the audience for this book, do you think? Think about the kind of illustrations, the fact it's a short story book. Hey, nice. A full sweep is either teens or people who like short stories. Yeah. As I said, multiple audiences. Okay, what is the main purpose of this sentence from the news article? Ooh. I didn't put the right picture in. But think about why are news articles? What's the purpose of a news article in general? Think about why do we have news articles? Did not put the right picture in. Yeah, normally we have a newspaper article to inform or to persuade. Mainly inform though. Which sentence shows clear bias? We talked a little bit about bias last week. Many people enjoy reading mystery novels, vegetables are the best food, the city council announced new recycling rules, or water boils at 100 degrees at sea level. Okay, it is this one. And the reason is because it's an opinion. I mean, everyone has their own favorite vegetables. There's no objective way of saying it is the best food. Whereas all the others, that one's a fact. That one's a fact. And yeah, this one's a fact. Okay. It's obvious that electric cars are the only way to save the planet from climate disaster. What is the purpose of that sentence, do you think? Inform, explain, entertain, persuade. Okay. Yeah, I would argue to persuade because it's an opinion. It's obvious that electric cars is using wording that is trying to sway you a little bit towards one opinion. Okay, which of the following is an example of objective writing where there is no bias? Nice. So it is that the new school uniform policy has both supporters and critics. The reason being because it's giving arguments from both sides. It's not a biased, one-sided argument like the others. Okay, so only a fool would buy this brand of phone. It's terrible. What type of language is being used, do you think? Is it neutral, emotive, informative, or descriptive? Hey, it is emotive. It's trying to play on your emotions to make you feel a certain way, by trying to influence you. Okay, a few questions left now. Why might a newspaper article about a local election only include quotes from one candidate? Thinking again about bias. Okay, yeah, it is to persuade. Um, by choosing not to include both sides of the argument, is clearly intentionally trying to sway you towards one way of thinking. So I guess that kind of adds to our points of last week. Bias is not always a bad thing if you're the one writing. Children are suffering because governments refuse to act. Only our donations can save them. Which type of bias is this? And we're going to cover types of bias today. Okay, emotional. The reason it's emotional is because it's trying to play on your emotions. By using words like telling you that children are suffering, it's making you feel sympathy and upset. There's no statistics because there's no mathematical data. Um, you could argue facts. I think there's more opinion. Political, possibly. There's not really mention, I guess, a little bit of governments. I get what you see. I get why you'd go political. Which word means intended to mislead or trick somebody? Let's finish off with a few of our word definitions. Good to keep revising these. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I gave you five new words, or six actually, and then there's going to be three here. It is deceptive. Okay, which word means causing disagreement or conflict between people? It is divisive. Think about like divide is to split. Okay, and the last question then. Which word means boring because it is always the same or lacking variety? Possessive, divisive, oppressive, monotonous. Okay, it is monotonous. Oh, very close to getting a clean sweep. Let's see how you've all done. Nice. Well done. All right. Let's go back onto what we have been looking at. Last week, we ended talking a little bit about bias. I just wanted to briefly recall with you what bias actually is. Bias is when a writer tries to sway the reader's way of thinking. Various ways to do this. Maybe they don't tell the full truth. Maybe they give you misleading information. Either way, it's when um, a writer tries to bring in their own opinions about things. And all writing can be biased. There's not a preference of types of writing, but it matters quite a lot because people use bias to try and manipulate ways of thinking. So as a reader, you've got to be very careful in trusting certain types of information. And we looked at ways to assess bias, and we're going to look a little bit more at this today. So things like considering, do you have a complete picture of events? Do you have every side of the story? If you don't, then the argument is probably bias. Has the text used multiple sources instead of just one or two? Are the sources used actually trustworthy? Were the authors of those sources trustworthy? Were they reliable? Have other points of view been considered? Is there only positive or negative information, or is there both sides of the argument? And does this text encourage curiosity or independent thinking? And we looked at the texts that were to do with electric scooters, and I asked you questions about their bias. Now, we didn't do these two, so I want to start today with these questions because we didn't have time last time. So, answering the chat as always, I appreciate your cooperation. Is this biased? Fast food chains claim to offer affordable meals, but they're really selling poor health in shiny packaging. With every greasy burger and oversized soda, customers are being fooled into thinking convenience matters more than well-being. Government should step in before another generation becomes addicted to junk foods. So, firstly, is this text biased? And if so, how can you tell? How does the tone affect the reader's perception of the topic? And who is the intended audience, do you think? Someone has said no, or so we've got conflicting answers. Somebody said no, somebody said it is biased. Well, is any reasons to those answers? Why have you said no? So he said it's for teens and adults. No, health reasons. I want you to think about what I told you about bias. What makes something bias? Is there multiple sides of the story here, or is it opinion? Okay, so it's opinion. It's opinion, which means it's not going to be fully trustworthy because there's not two sides of the story here. And they've tried to trick you a little bit by using certain words. Um, they've given an opinion. They've kind of wrapped it up in something that doesn't look like an opinion, but it is. They're really selling poor health in shiny packaging. Yeah, that's an opinion. They've not given data to back it up. They've not sourced it. They've not given multiple sides of the story. So it is opinion. So it is biased. It's meant for young people and young adults. Yeah, pretty much. I guess it's pretty much for anybody who goes to fast food who's interested in health. Someone said he's not trying to encourage people to better their health. No, he's not at all. There's one person too, pardon me, too serious for children. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So I said it clearly is biased because it only presents one side and a negative view of fast food. It uses emotional and judgmental language rather than being evidence and fact-based. And it has uses words like selling poor health, fooled, addicted to junk food, which reveals the writer's strong disapproval and persuasive purpose. The tone is pretty angry when you read it. It's quite judgmental. And it makes the reader feel alarmed and guilty about eating fast food. But yeah, thank you everyone who got that right. Now, lastly, is this one biased? Data from the National Health Survey 2023 shows that the average adult consumes 25% more fast food than a decade ago. Researchers note an increase in calorie intake, but also a rise in healthier menu options across major chains. The report concludes that changes in eating habits are influenced by convenience, marketing, and evolving consumer preferences. So is this text biased? How can you tell? How does the tone affect the perception? And which words reveal the writer's purpose? Let's have a look. No is for adults or younger adults, not biased. So we've got quite a few people saying no, not biased. Let me ask you this. What made you think it was not biased? Somebody said because you've got scientific studies. I agree. I think, yeah, the scientific nature of this makes it less biased. Um, well, that's the thing. Somebody said it's not biased because it shows both sides with data statistics. Does it show both sides of the argument? Yes, it's backed up by evidence, and I would argue relatively reliable evidence. It's given a statistic, but has it given both sides of the argument? It's a question. What do you think? It's told us that the National Health Survey, that's one side of the argument, has said that more people are eating fast food. Therefore, researchers know an increase in calorie intake. That's the same argument. That's not considering both sides of the argument because that is the same argument, just supported by different researchers. So, no, this text is not biased as it uses convincing statistics and is proven by a group of scientists mentioning the NHS. I said this. The text is mostly unbiased. I think bias is a spectrum, it's a scale. You can't be, or at least it's very difficult to be completely unbiased. I would agree with a lot of what you were saying. I think it's mostly unbiased because there is reliable factual information with multiple reliable sources. So well done for saying that. However, it doesn't consist of multiple sides of the argument. Yes, its tone is formal, neutral, and informative, which encourages facts rather than emotions, but there isn't multiple sides of the story. So I would say this is 80% unbiased, but without other sides of the story, yeah, it's not completely unbiased, if that makes sense. So I put that in there to trick you, and I'm sad that we didn't get to do it last time. So I'd always look out. If you're ever asked about bias, it's a spectrum. It's not just yes or no. It's mostly, but to what extent kind of thing. Okay. So, what kind of things then make a text biased? I've summarized it into 5 different points of things that you could look out for if you're thinking about bias. One of them is like emotional bias. This is when a writer uses words that are purposefully there to make you feel a certain way. So for example, I think it was the Kahoot quiz, there was the children are suffering. Well, suffering's emotive language. It's put in there to make you feel sympathy for the children, even if the facts aren't correct. So it doesn't matter if what the writer is saying is actually correct. The point is that they're trying to influence you by using language that makes you feel a certain way. Omission bias. This is when you leave out information. So if you omit something, it's to leave something out. So for example, if you're not using two sides of the argument, you'd be missing out information. Selection bias, when you purposely choose which facts or examples to tell people, because that makes the data be viewed in a certain way. Opinion bias, when the person is just telling you their opinion with no facts. And then statistical bias, when you use statistics to misrepresent reality. So, for example, if I was a drugs company and I was trying to test if my drug was effective or not, maybe there were five different studies. One of them showed that the drug did work. The other four showed that they didn't work. Well, statistical bias would be if I showed only the one that did work. And I said, look at this beautiful data. It showed my drug worked. When there are four others that showed that it didn't work. That'd be statistical bias. Okay. So a little activity for you then. And I've left the five at the bottom and I've randomized them. I want you to think what kind of bias is being presented in each of these sentences. So firstly, the heartless government has cruelly abandoned thousands of families to suffer in silence. What kind of bias is that? Samir says emotional. Absolutely. Anyone agree with him? Anyone disagree? See, emotional from Farid. Absolutely. Nice. Yeah, I think emotional. You've got words like cruelly and abandoned and suffering. Yeah, heartless. They're all words purposefully chosen to make you feel sympathy. Okay. Number two, crime has fallen in the city centre this year, proving our streets are safer than ever. Is there, what kind could that be? Is there misinformation? Has someone purposely chosen to use information over others? Is it opinion based or is it statistical mathematics based? Ooh, we've got conflicting on this one. We've got omission, we've got selection. Anyone want to chime in and agree or disagree? We've got another for selection. Omission. Ooh, statistical. So we've got two for omission, two for selection, and one for statistical. I would say it is selection bias. And the reason is because it's missed out information. Um, it's not statistical because there's no mathematical numbers in there or like statistics. I wouldn't necessarily say it's opinion because I guess it's about a topic that's not really opinions based. Um, it's missing out information. It's saying crime has fallen in the city centre this year. How do they know that? What do they mean? What kind of crime? Crime's a big topic. You know, it could be theft, it could be murder, it could be car crashes. Like, crime is a big thing. So you've got to limit it down. Okay, number three, 90% of people love our new transport system. What could that be? Someone saying statistical. Farid saying opinion. Think about what we've got there. We've got 90%. We've got a number. Statistical. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's statistics because you're including mathematical data. School uniforms are a complete waste of money, and everyone knows they make students miserable. What would number four be? Opinion. Any more? Anyone disagree? Anyone agree? Opinion. Yep, I'd go opinion. I think that's definitely someone's opinion. There's no facts, there's no evidence to back that up. Okay, and then number five, therefore, must be our new company policy has been welcomed by staff across the organization. What is that one going to be? Someone said opinion, emission. Anyone agree, disagree? Farid says emission, statistical, emission. A lot of people saying emission. I would agree. I think there's, again, missed out information there. Yeah, it's been welcomed by staff across the organization. How many staff? It just says by staff. That could be one person, or that could be 100 people. There's missing information there. Okay, right. Moving on from bias then, a little bit, kind of looking at a similar realm, is looking at this idea of diversity. How could we overcome bias in nonfiction? And one way is thinking about representation and diversity. So texts are aimed, as we know, at specific readers based on interests, age, locations, experiences, background, that sort of thing. And representation just means how someone or something is portrayed. So, for example, if I was doing a scientific study and I was testing, again, if my drug worked, I'd want to do that study in a range of people. I want to do it across all genders, all ages, and all ethnicities. And the reason being is because a more wide range of experiences and genetics and that sort of thing is going to give me more accurate data. Whereas if I do a study that only uses men and only uses people aged, I don't know, 20 to 25, well, that's lacking. It's not a full, complete story because I've not considered everyone. So, for example, travel writing differs depending on perspective. So, for example, if you're a tourist, you're excited, you want to go on holiday. The experiences you're going to have are based on you living there a very, very short amount of time. Whereas if you're a resident, you're going to have a very different experience to someone who's going there for the first time. You're going to have lived there all your life, potentially. You'll know what's good and what's not good. So representation is important. Both perspectives add value, so it's important to know the perspectives of both sets of people. And historically, some audiences have been ignored or misrepresented, and often because writers lack diverse experiences themselves. So that leads to things like prejudice. So, a few quick questions about diversity, um, just to get us thinking a little bit. How can diverse representation in a newspaper article specifically improve how readers understand an issue? I know it's a bit of a broad question, but does anyone have anything they want to add or any thoughts about this? How might increasing the range of people that we include in a newspaper article increase the understanding of the issue? Farage says by seeing different perspectives on a problem. Absolutely. Imagine if there was a newspaper article talking about speed bumps. Or even potholes. Well, somebody who lives in an area where there's loads of potholes is going to have a much different experience or opinion than a person living in an area with very few potholes. So it's important to include both sides of the story. I'll give you an example for those who don't understand. So, by quoting people from different backgrounds and viewpoints, a newspaper article helps readers see multiple sides of a story. This makes the coverage more balanced and trustworthy, showing that the writer has considered different experiences rather than just prompting a single agenda. A wide range of voices builds credibility and fairness, which is essential for journalism. So, the point I'm trying to make is thinking back to bias. We said that something is biased if it doesn't have multiple sides of the story. Well, how can we make things unbiased? By adding in diversity, by adding in a range of people who have different experiences, who I don't know, are different genders or different ages or different ethnicities. It makes the viewpoint, the story, a lot more credible. Think about charities. Why is it important for a charity leaflet to represent people or communities respectfully and accurately? Imagine, let's say there's a charity for cancer research. Why is it important that in the leaflet for cancer research, we talk about the cancer patients very respectfully? If you're a reader, how would you interpret that information of respect versus not respectful? So they become popular? Yeah, pretty much. The point of a leaflet is you want somebody to read it. And in order for somebody to agree with your standpoint, you've got to approach it quite respectfully. Otherwise, it comes across quite bad. So I said this: a charity leaflet represents people respectfully, avoids pity or stereotypes, and instead focuses on shared humanity. This builds trust with the readers and engages or encourages genuine empathy rather than guilt. It's like a psychological technique. If you are wanting somebody to donate to your charity, don't guilt trip them because that's just going to end in a response where people just go, no, I'm not going to give to that charity because you just made me feel really bad. But if you approach it from a respectful standpoint and you build trust with that person, then they're a lot more likely to like you and open up to you and want to give you money for that charity. It's basic human psychology. When we feel rejected, we don't want to help. When we feel accepted, we do. So it's always better to be respectful. So we could give the patient having a feeling. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, right. I think this is the final question. Why should reports, such as government documents and scientific studies, aim to include diverse data, participants, and examples? So, kind of like I was saying about drugs. Imagine I was doing a drug trial and I wanted to test if a drug worked. Why should I use participants that are of every age, every ethnicity, and every gender to do so? Gives accurate answers. Yeah, if I'm missing out information, if I'm missing out participants, then I'm not getting the complete picture. So it's important to use a wide range of people so that it does not become biased for evidence, to convince people it's legit, to avoid anomalies. Great, you're all correct. So yeah, including diversity reports and scientific studies makes them more accurate, fair, and representative. When research only focuses on one group, for example, a single age, gender, or region, the results may overlook how an issue affects other people. So, government documents and studies that draw on varied participants, sources, and perspectives produce conclusions that are more reliable and useful. So, yeah, cool. So, I know we've not got long left, and I want to move a little bit onto form. We've looked at bias, we've looked at purpose and audience. We've not looked at form. When it comes to your GCSEs, which is scarily only a few years away, um, you'll get asked as part of your English language to write a certain form of non-fiction text. And normally it's one of four. Normally it'll be a letter, a speech, an article, or I think it's newspaper article. I'll have to fact check that. But yeah, one of those four. So I want to explore those four over the next, well, now and then next week a little bit. So that you have a better idea of earlier on how to write and how to structure certain forms of nonfiction writing. So form refers to how and where a piece of writing appears. Like audience and purpose, the form influences choices in language, tone, and structure. Each form has its own typical features, and writers choose form to suit their purpose and audience. So again, just a very quick activity. Um, I want to think about certain elements that each different form of nonfiction text might include. Firstly, I might skip text message just because I think there's a better one to do. As an example, a text message might include informal language, things like emojis, abbreviations, pictures. That's kind of what I'm going for here in this exercise. What kind of features might a letter include? If you think back to primary school, think back to what you've been doing in English, what do we tend to include in letters? Any ideas? No wrong answers, could literally be anything. So it's a date and address. Um, in answer to your question, what time is it now? 8:15, so that'll be in 20 minutes. Dates, address, a message to the person or group of people. Yeah, I think a lot of you have got like the greetings, sort of address things. Signing off, so like dear sir or madam, to whom it may concern, yours sincerely, yours faithfully, that sort of thing. Yeah, the formal tone also for a letter. Definitely not slang terms. We tend to write letters because they are professional. Um, so we tend to use formal language rather than informal. Emails. What kind of things might an email might have in it? I guess an email would depend who it's been sent to. Let's say it's a formal email to like a business or to someone professional. So it's a gmail.com, possibly. Yeah, I guess it depends what kind of company you're with your email. Someone said, like a letter, but on a device. Formal again, somebody said. I agree. I think formal language. What about like things you can add in that you can't put into a letter? What do you normally start with at the top? You get a little, I don't want to give it away. You get a little place to put something at the top of the email. Links and documents, like attachments. Yeah. I was thinking like subject lines, things like that. Title. Newspaper articles, I might just go through these so we can move on. Things you might find in a newspaper are things like bold headings, factual reporting, quotes from actual sources. Very much compared to a blog, which is a much more casual and persuasive tone. Um, More likely to be able to invite comments compared to a newspaper article, which is just one person's reporting. I report things like subheadings, factual information, um, yeah, bullet points and numbers, including data. And then the last three. I want to move on. We're going to explore the four big ones over the next a little bit of time. I think today we'll probably just get letter, and then next week we'll look at the other three types of form. And by the end of this, my hope is that you are able to structure these types of non-fiction text better. So let's look at letter purposes. Why do we write a letter? Well, we do this because we have a goal. We said before we have different purposes to entertain, to persuade, to inform, to advocate, that sort of thing. Well, you need to be very clear when you write a letter what that purpose is. And we'll come on to the structure in a second, but you tend to tell the person what your goal is in the letter. So, for example, you might include something like, Dear Sir or Madam, I am writing to persuade, or I am writing to inform, I'm writing to ask. You normally tell them in the letter what your purpose is, um, and including all the necessary details, because the reader who's receiving it needs to understand why they've received it and what you want from them. So we might use letters for various reasons. Um, I mean, I guess letters are becoming a little bit outdated, especially in the modern world. We tend to email. I don't think I've ever written a letter. I don't know. I don't think I ever have. It's normally emails, that sort of thing. But you might write job applications, complaints. If you're a business owner or you're working for a company, you might write a letter to a customer. Yeah. And you would definitely include, like, I am writing to, along with the purpose. Within the tone of a letter. So it said AI took over. Yeah, that's the way it's heading, isn't it? Unfortunately. We don't really do anything physical anymore. It tends to be all online. Um, yeah, tones of letters, definitely more formal than informal. Again, it's a professional business relationship that you tend to send letters. So, like, if you don't know the person and you want something from them, it's best not to send them casual language, just because you want to come across in a certain way. You want them to perceive you in a certain way. So it's best not to include informal language. You can definitely be firm. There's a difference between being firm and informal, but always make sure that you write politely and respectfully and avoid emotive language. Um, yeah, when you're writing a letter, emotive language comes across as a little bit desperate sometimes and often can be read as unprofessional. So it's better to have a wide range of vocabulary that is appropriate to the formal nature of that letter rather than anything emotive or informal. So, thinking about the structure then, here's certain things that you would include in a letter. And I'll go to this. Probably better to show you a visual. Normally, in a letter, we include in the top right corner information about yourself. So, your name, your address, today's dates, your email or your phone number. Normally, in the address, we include like the physical address and then the postcode as well. So, the street name, house number, and postcode. And underneath, you would include the recipient's information. So the full name, the company that they work for, the address of that company office, that sort of thing. And I would begin the letter with a little introduction. So I'd say, I will cover this a bit more in a second, but sort of like dear, then the name. And it's important to always follow that with a comma. before going on to write. And we'll cover the structure a bit more in detail now. Someone said, worse. Oh man, yeah, we are, aren't we? Well, this is the one I'm going to cover in a second. So, beginning letter is slightly different depending on who you're sending it to. I know a few people have picked up on this already. I would always start it formally, even if you know the person, because that's just etiquette. That's just correct moral etiquette. So I'd always start it with something like dear, followed by a person's name or title. Now, it depends if you know the person or not as to whether you say their name or not. If you do know the person, I would include their title and their name, their last name. So Mr. Jones, Mrs. Patel, if you know them. If you don't know them, I would go by their gender. So I'd say dear sir or madam. Um, it's a little bit of a debate whether you would include something like to whom it may concern. I know if you don't know the name, that tends to be the go-to, but there is debate as to whether that is too informal. And so I would always try and stick with dear because it kind of gives a professional atmosphere. If you don't know, if you really don't know their sex or gender, I would go to whom it may concern. It's probably a good one. But every greeting must be followed by a comma, and your first sentence should be on a new line and should state the purpose of your letter straight away. So I would go, Dear Mr. Jones, I am writing to inform you, blah, 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 blah. Dear Mr. Jones, I am writing to persuade you to, blah, 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 blah. So I would follow the dear, the comma, and straight away state the purpose of your letter. Okay, so again, only use the first name if you know the recipient personally. And ending is very much the same. There's various ways you could end a letter, but I would do so based on who you're speaking to. So if you did know the person's name, I think it's correct etiquette to go with yours sincerely. So if it was Dear Mr. Jones, yours sincerely, Mr. Clark. If you began with Dear Sir or Madam, I would end with yours faithfully. That's just a little tip there that I would do. It kind of shows that you're connecting ideas. And again, I would always follow the sign off with a comma. So yours sincerely, comma, yours faithfully, comma, and then your name, Mr. Clark, that sort of thing. So yeah, always make sure you match the beginning to the end. So thinking a little bit about paragraphing then. Paragraphs, like in every form of writing, help you organize your text and it helps to guide the reader through ideas. So I don't know if you remember back, we looked at tiptoe in the past. I think it was when we were doing fiction writing. Every paragraph should have a different focus to the one before it and to the one after it. And if you're ever unsure when to start a new paragraph, I would use the acronym tiptoe. Um, so time, information, person, opinion, I can't remember the other ones. But yeah, letters are exactly the same. If you're changing the topic, start a new paragraph. So paragraphs, each new point or topic should have its own paragraph. So I would generally structure it like this. I'd include an introduction, which is the purpose for your writing. I'd follow it with a main body about key ideas, examples, details. And I'd end with a conclusion. And in your conclusion, you should basically summarize everything that you've just said. But I would also include exactly what you want the person to do next as a result of reading your letter. That's just a good psychological technique. If you tell them what to do, or at least what you want out of the situation, it's a good psychological influencing technique. So, for example, if I was an applicant for applying for a job, I could end with, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Wording it like that is basically implying or saying that they are going to respond to you. So it's kind of like psychologically getting into their head that they are going to respond. You could say something like, I don't know, I'm looking forward to your response. Something like that, a little call to action that's kind of framed in a way that is expectation without actually saying it's expectation, if that makes sense. Someone said, if you know the person's name, you would say yours sincerely, and if you do not, you would write yours faithfully. Correct. Okay. So when it comes to planning a letter, then, these are the steps I would sort of follow. I would start by thinking about your overall purpose. So, like we said, I'd start with this bit here. Think about your purpose. Think about the reason you're writing that letter. Is it to inform? Is it to ask for something? Is it to persuade somebody? Is it to argue a certain thing? I would always start with your purpose and what you want the outcome to be. Nope, it's fine. It's always good to ask questions. Step two, I would then list your key points. And these provide quite a strong basis for what your paragraphs will be. So, for example, maybe you want to mention if I was applying for a job, I'd want to mention my CV. So that could be one paragraph where I might talk about my CV skills. Um, Maybe a second paragraph could be talking about my experience, why I'm suited to the job, my qualities are suited to the job. So I'd make that a separate paragraph because the topic changes. I then might include a third paragraph where I'm inviting further contact. So that's my conclusion where I'm saying I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Or maybe I give my availability and I'm like, I'm free this day and this day for an interview. Just something that psychologically spurs the reader to want to respond. Then, before you even start writing, I would plan your opening and closing. So, like we said, do you have the person's name? If you do, then it's Dear Mr. Jones or whatever, ending in yours sincerely. If you don't, then it's ending with yours faithfully, and it's Dear Sir or Madam. And if you don't have the gender, then it's to whom it may concern. Then I would always draft it very carefully. Get the paragraphs down, the conclusion, get the sir or madam, the intro and ending complete, and I would proofread. Because it's a very formal thing, you don't want to be sending it with loads of errors. Because if you do, it comes across as extremely unprofessional. So you want to make sure that all of the details are correct, like all the address, the date, that sort of thing, as well as any spelling, punctuation, and grammar. Because again, you want it to be professional. You want the person to respond. You want the person to give you what you want. So if you start adding in errors in there, then they're probably not going to give you what they want. Um, is the chat disabled? I thought I can see you putting things in there. Okay. Right. I'm going to save what I had planned next. I was going to move on to a speech, but I don't want to start something that's we're not going to finish today because speech is a little bit longer than a letter. So, what we're going to do, and I know this is rare, we'll finish early. We'll finish a few minutes early. What I will do is show you what I was going to give you for a little bit of homework. Ignore the speech one because we've not done that today. But what you can do, and I've not been receiving as much homework recently. I don't know what's happened. I used to be getting loads from you guys. It'd be nice to see some more people sending some stuff in. I know it's optional, but I personally think it'd be helpful to you to get practice. So what I want is I'm going to upload these slides. Do you all have access to the slides now? I have been uploading them, so you should have access to them. And if anyone wants to send me a letter, please do. I encourage you to send it. Email it to me at this email address and I will mark it, give you detailed comments, and send it back to you. I think it would be useful for you to get practice in. So I encourage you all to do this. So that's this week's homework. And next week, we'll move on to speeches. We'll look at newspaper articles and we will come back and look at letters again. So yeah, I'll stay around for a couple of minutes. I would do number 6. I was going to give you 5 or 6, the either and the or, but because we've not looked at a speech today, a letter. If you want to do it, please do the letter and send it to me. It can be, it says, an editor of a newspaper to argue that people should not be judged on their appearance. So thinking about an argument, you would include specific data points. You would maybe include multiple points of view. Think about everything we've done on bias, everything that make things not bias. What kind of techniques could you include to argue? We have, I was going to go through techniques today in the speech, but we'll do that next week. Okay, cool. I'll stay around for a couple of minutes. You're very welcome to stay for the GCSE session in 5 minutes time. But otherwise, have a very nice week, guys. And I hope school's going well. Hope you're all well. Do we write an address and phone number and extra details? Yeah, have a go at doing it all. Have a go at doing that exact structure that I gave you here. Make it all up. It doesn't have to be real. Could be a fake name, a fake address, a fake date, fake email, fake number, fake your information. The point is that you try structure it. Because when it comes to GCSE, you'll get marked on these kind of things. The point is that you argue. I want to see you have a go at trying to convince me of a point. And I would challenge you to try and make it not biased. And again, you can make up statistics and things like that, but have a go at arguing a point. Very nice. We always love to see people go up sets. Um, I would prefer it as an online document if that is okay. Things like a Word document or a Google Docs, and you send it to me that way. I have had people in the past write it all out and then screenshot it and send me it that way because I can just screenshot it back to you with all my written comments. But I prefer an online document, just makes it easier. Okay, right. Have a nice week, Key Stage 3. And as I said, you're welcome to stay. I just want to make sure, do you guys have access to the slides now? I have been uploading them. The joke never gets old, does it? Right, okay. So, welcome to Key Stage 4, or anyone from GCSE who is here already. As per was requested last week, we will do a revision Kahoot because I know you've been missing it. So, what I will do is I'll leave it on and give you a few minutes to join. Okay, there you go. There's a Kahoot quiz. I'll be back in a few minutes. Yeah, we're going to be doing it for year 10 and 11 GCSE, and we're going to continue looking at AO2 with structure today, which is what was requested to me a couple of weeks ago, and I've answered, and I'm here and I'm doing it. Um, Okay, let's see. There are quite a few people not in the Kahoot. I'll start in 30 seconds. You've got 30 seconds. Everything's there for you to join. If you want to join, as always, you can join midway through. It will be on the revision stuff that we did last week on the effects of the reader, and then we'll move on to structure. So, give you 30 more seconds and I'll read the chat. Okay, right, let's make a start because it's 16 minutes past. You can join if you want to, um, midway through. Oh, I forgot to put the sound on. Okay, which of the following explanations best demonstrates a high-level analysis of the effect on the reader? Think about what we said last week. How would you get those high marks in the exam? What would you avoid? That's really annoying. Okay, okay, a bit of a split on this one. Yeah, I'd go something like this. I've missed off the start of it, but I'd always try and mention either atmosphere or tone, and I'd give a very detailed description of exactly how the reader is made to feel, understand, think, link, sympathize, or ask. We wouldn't use these because they're just not detailed enough. Something like that would not get you high marks in an exam because you've not been specific about exactly how it's affected the reader. And same with this, it's very much a primary school level response, and I would expect at GCSE we can get a little better than that. Okay, in AO2, analyzing the effect on the reader means. Okay, lovely. We love to see almost a clean sweep. Yeah, it's about how language affects the reader and how it makes you think, feel, or understand certain things. Which sentence uses specific rather than generic effect language? Think about what I said before. What gives you a high level answer? What should you always try and include? And as always, I can see more people entering the session. So if you want to join the Kahoot, the pin is down here. We're only 3 questions in. I would very much appreciate your cooperation. So yeah, most people got this. Include the atmosphere. Always. Nice one, Fire Rising. What does it mean when the tone is described as claustrophobic? What does that actually mean in terms of the reader? Yeah, lovely. I mean, think about if you are claustrophobic, you're in a confined space. So you'd feel quite unsettled by that feeling. Okay, which of the following tones would most likely make the reader reflective or melancholic? Put yourself in the shoes of the writer. Okay. I'd say nostalgic. Yeah, definitely. Like if you were thinking about the past, you might almost yearn for the past. And so you'd feel quite introspective. You'd be looking back, quite reflective, almost a little bit sad. I don't know. Okay, right. In O2 analysis, which of these verbs best deepens analysis? Yeah. Come on, think about what we said last week. It's all of the above. Of course it is. Think about our acronym, faults. You should always be including one of these words in your explanation of the effect on the reader. The code is down here. It's 2598531. A little bomb down there. Okay, what's the difference between tone and atmosphere? Don't rush it. Read them all. Think about it. Yeah, it is the yellow one. Tone is the writer's attitude, it's the way they feel, and atmosphere is the resultant emotion in the reader. Okay, let's speed on a little bit. Select the tone. I suppose that's one way to ruin a perfectly good evening, she said, folding her arms. What would be the tone of that sentence? Just for the sake of time, I might start skipping. So get your answers in quick. Cool. Yeah, I think somebody said that would be relatively annoyed. Okay, what's the tone of this? I will not stand by and watch this happen again. If you were in that position and you said that, why would you be saying it? How might you be feeling as you were saying it? Lovely. Yeah, defiant. Some independence there. Okay. If only they had listened, no one would of this would have happened. None of this, sorry, none of this would have happened. Nice. Yeah, regretful. Definitely a way to think about it. Okay, right. Carrying on, let's speed forward. What about the atmosphere this time? The horizon bled into grey, the last colours of the day swallowed by the sea. What kind of emotion is brought up in the reader there? Okay, yeah, definitely tension, definitely something foreboding. I mean, the colours, the grey bleeding, like bleeding all the colour away. The swallowing of the sea. The language there is very foreboding. It's very ominous. The chandelier swayed above the silent dining hall, its crystals trembling in the draught. Think about the kind of atmosphere that's created. I'm going to skip when we get to 5 seconds for the sake of time. So get your answers in. Okay, nice. Ominous. Yeah, something definitely ominous there. If we don't know what's making the chandelier shake, that's a scary feeling. The kitchen hummed with quiet conversation and the smell of baking bread. Again, we'll skip at 5, just to get your answers in. Yeah, definitely warm. Think about that feeling as a kid when your family were baking food on an evening. It's a nice, nice, nice feeling. Okay. I am no bird and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with independent will. We looked at this quote last week. What was the atmosphere of it? Nice. It's very liberating. Should inspire you. The room was so small that when he turned, his elbow struck the wall behind him. Come on, we looked at this one last week as well. We looked at Charles Dickens. I included it for a reason because it's a really common atmosphere that I want you to use. Skip. Okay, yeah, claustrophobic. Okay, the past is not dead. It's not even the past. We looked at that quote as well. How does it make you feel when you think about that? Hey, nice. We've got a nice split across the answers. Yeah, could definitely be quite haunting depending on the past, or equally a little bit reflective too. Okay, we are all just visitors here, passing through borrowed time. What might the reader think about life from this quote? Is it permanent and controllable? Is it brief and should be valued? Is it meaningless and repetitive? Or is it full of suffering? Nice. Yeah, it's brief. It's borrowed time. Like we have a very limited amount of time. Okay, her smile was a mask she wore for the world. What does the reader understand about her character? She's wearing a mask. What does it mean? What does the metaphor for the mask mean? Okay, yeah, hide your true emotions. If someone wears a mask, they are hiding. Okay, all the world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players. What can you understand from this quote? Bit of Macbeth there. Or is it Hamlet? It's one of the two. Hey, a bit of a split for this one. Not many people got it. A lot of people went for people have different roles throughout life. If you think back to our Macbeth work, it was a very pessimistic view of life. Kind of this idea that a lot of people lie and just put on acts, and they're not their true selves, and they're kind of there to fulfill certain roles. So it's not quite as literal as that, as the red one. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. Quote by Maya Angelou. What does this quote make you feel? Okay, so yeah, I went with pain of holding back. So the untold story inside of you, the agony that comes with it. Agony is like really great pain. Okay, a few questions left. Not all of those who wander are lost by J.R.R. Tolkien. What does this quote make you understand about exploration and journeys? Hey, you know what? I think I would allow the red one, having read it back, because it's kind of a very similar vein of answer, really. But yeah, some journeys are purposeful and meaningful. Some you go on because you're supposed to be on them, and then you learn things along the way on that journey. You grow as a person. Okay, we did this quote as well. It was a bright cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. What feeling or thought does this quote, as meant to write, evoke? Okay, nice. Yeah, definitely unsettling feeling and almost quite disorientating. It pushes you off a little bit. Okay, last three questions then. The 3rd of May, Bistritz left Munich at 8:35 p.m. on a 1:40 train. What narrative structure does this quote illustrate? We'll look more at narrative structures when we look at structure of whole texts next week. Ooh, only one person went for this. We looked at epistolic structures. I gave you an example of an epistolic structure, and it's when we write letters, journal or diary entries. And that's definitely a diary entry. Okay, what language device is used in this Macbeth slash Hamlet quote? I've added in a couple of language revision ones as well, just for the sake of it. Okay, a little bit of split there. It is a metaphor because it's saying all the world is a stage and all the women are merely players. So it's comparisons. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. Which language device is being used? Think carefully about this. Nice. It's personification. Death is a concept. Here, personified into a person. Right, let's see who has won. Nice. Well done, Farad. Okay, right. Let's go on. We looked last week at the effects of the reader quite heavily. Um, and it was requested to me a few weeks ago that we start to look at structure because apparently structure is the most challenging part of AO2. And I would agree, but it doesn't have to be. So, what I'm going to do um, over the next few weeks is I'm going to break structure down a little bit. And we're going to break it into extract questions and whole text questions. But all structure is, and if you ever approach a structure question, you should approach it with this question in mind. What is changing? Because that's all structure is. How does a text change from beginning to middle to end? So, if we think back to last week, I gave you, or it wasn't that, it was this. Different exam boards do different types of AO2 questions. Some are language only, some are, well, one is structure only if you're doing AQA, and others are combined language and structure, mainly Edexcel, no CR. However, every single exam or exam board will have a whole text question, every single one of them. And within that, you're expected to answer structure. Now, not all of them, but some of them have structure-based extract questions, every single one apart from AQA. So that's what we're going to focus a little bit on today. So when we think about structure, we're thinking about what changes. So structure refers to how a story is told to you and what shapes the flow of events to interest you as a reader. So we've got to think about these five things. Who, firstly, when you're thinking about who, you're thinking about who is the narrator, whose perspective is this story from, who is introduced, are there any new characters introduced, when are they introduced, how did our character meet them, so on and so on. Anything to do with who. We've got to consider what as well. What's actually happening in the story? Does that change at all? What's the narrative structure? Is it circular? Is it epistolic? What sentence structures are being used? What specific structural devices are being used? Where's our story set? Does that setting change at all? What's the setting described like? Um, how do we find out what that setting is? Is that influential? We've got to consider when. When is the story set? Does the timing change that our story? Is there a flashback, for example? Is there a flash forward? Um, does the time dramatically change between paragraphs? For example, if it is an episodic structure, we've got to consider the story arc. Are we at the exposition? Are we at the rising action? Are we at the climax? Are we at the resolution? Where are we in the story? And all of that links to the big question of why. Why are all of those things important and how do they impact the reader? So we're going to break that down over the next few weeks. Um, so, firstly, we're going to think about our extract questions. And I've kind of briefly broken down the different structural devices that you could find in an extract question. Things like pacing, listing, repetition, anaphora, simple sentences, minor sentences, different sentence types, fragmentation, and a stream of consciousness. It's worth noting that all the extract question is mostly focused on sentence level structure rather than our big story-based changes. The story-based changes are better served in our whole text question. Whereas in an extract, you never really get more than 10 to 15 lines. So they're not really much story-wise can change in that time. Whereas what can change are smaller things. So thinking about how the sentences and paragraphs are actually structured. So that's what I would do for the extract. Now, I've included at the bottom change of focus. That's a bit of a gray area because, like I said, not much story-wise is going to change in 10 to 15 lines. But possibly something could change. Who knows? Maybe there's a change in perspective. Maybe there's a change in focus of topic, something like that. So it's definitely something you can still talk about in an extract question. So I said you may also want to mention any changes in focus, whether that's emotional, perspective, or what's being described, or even the order of events. But that's more so educast than anything else if you are doing educast. Let's see. None of that. None of that. Right. Okay. So first thing we're going to explore is this idea of pacing. Pacing, I've included first for a reason, because every single other technique links back to pacing. Pacing is just about how quick the story is. Are you told something very slowly or are you told it very quickly? And that order of events and the order of the story really influences how the reader is made to interpret, feel, think, all of that. So writers use pacing very, very carefully, and they do so to make you feel a certain way, whether it's to build tension or suspense by using slower pacing, or if it's to use fast pacing to convey urgency and fear and that sort of thing. Pacing very much reflects emotions. So if I was running away from, let's say, I was being chased by someone in the street, my heart would be racing, my blood would be pumping around my body, my thoughts would be racing. So as a writer, I'd want to describe that using quite a fast pace because I'd want the writing to reflect the feeling of being in that moment. Whereas if I was, I don't know, dawdling through a field and I was feeling very relaxed, I'd maybe take my time to describe a little bit more, really slow the pacing to again reflect that, I don't know, positive thinking, that calmness. So pacing really reflects the feelings of the character and what's going on. So as I said, it's controlled by other structural devices, namely sentence and paragraph length, things like fragmentation, listing, all the things we're going to consider. So it's a very useful technique to remember because it's very easy to include in explanations rather than a technique in itself. It is technically a technique and it will get you terminology marks, but it's really useful in an explanation. It's kind of similar to like atmosphere and tone. They are technically language techniques in themselves, but they're better served in explanations rather than making a specific point about pacing. It's better used in an explanation. So let's look at fast pacing to begin with. What are the effects of fast pacing? Well, again, like I said, it builds or reflects what's going on in the story. So if there's fast pacing, it tends to be at moments where there is intense emotion, whether that's excitement or whether that's fear, whether that's urgency. The fast pace mirrors that very nicely. And it shows periods of action and chaos, imitates the feeling of being breathless, therefore making the reader feel breathless. And how is it created? Well, things like short, sharp, exclamatory, or fragmented sentences. And we'll look more at this in a second. Sometimes you might get quite quick, short dialogue. So if people are arguing with each other, that tends to be quite fast paced because it's exploring those explosive emotions and tends to be very little description. If you ever get like a chunk of paragraph that's very descriptive, that's slow pacing. Whereas if you get those really short paragraphs and really short dialogue, that's quick pacing. So, for example, she ran, full stop, faster, full stop. The footsteps behind her grew louder, full stop. A door slammed, full stop. Silence, full stop. You've got a lot of very short and minor sentences in there. Well, that's quite fast pacing because you're moving from one thing to the next very quickly. And I think it's pretty obvious, but what's trying to be conveyed there is a chase sequence. And so obviously the character will be quite scared almost and fearful. So, how would the writer get the reader to feel the same fear and intensity? By using a fast pace. By adding in these full stops and really short sentences, it's making it very quick between thoughts. So she ran, one thought. Faster, a second thought. The footsteps, a third thought. The door, a fourth one. Silence, the fifth one. So we're moving between thoughts one to five very quickly. And as a reader, that doesn't give us much time to catch up. And so it kind of places us in the moment with the character because we're also breathless from that fast pace, if that makes sense. So it's a very clever technique it's in structure. However, if you want something slower paced, you'd do it because you want to create some sort of calming atmosphere. Or even if you just want to place focus on something. I think if you were here last year, we looked at an extract from AQA that was a really long description of a dinosaur. That text in itself was very adventurous. It was about the fear that comes with the dinosaur. Although there was a lot of description. So it wasn't necessarily calming because there was a dinosaur threat that was going to kill the characters, but it wanted you to focus on certain aspects of that dinosaur. And the point of using that description was to get you to think a very detailed, in a way about the dinosaur, which places focus on it, which therefore brings up fear. So, how it's created, longer, complex sentences, things like listing, reflective dialogue, a stream of consciousness kind of dialogue, a detailed description. So, for example, a quote by Daphne du Maurier from Rebecca: "The sea lapped softly against the shore. A faint breeze stirred the long grass in the dunes. In the distance, a gull cried once and was silent again." Even just reading it, you read it quite slow. You've got time to process. Um, Now, I guess it's a little caveat in saying that fast and slow paces aren't just tension and then calm. It's not really as simple as fast is tension, slow is calm. You've got to look at the dialogue, you've got to look at the words as well. So there's a reason I included this quote, because although it is quite slow, it's not necessarily calm. It's almost uneasy in the calmness. So I put the gentle rhythm of the sentence and the focus on quiet imagery creates a sense of stillness and anticipation, as it's foreboding towards something sinister. Because the moment lingers on small details, the reader is invited to pause and absorb, which is suspenseful. So there is a nuance to pacing and why it's a higher level skill, because it's not as simple as calm versus tension, if that makes sense. So, a little quick exercise, as always. I really appreciate your input. Fast or slow pace? First one, by Arthur Conan Doyle, The Hound of the Baskervilles. He turned and ran. The sound of pursuit was close behind him. His breath came in ragged gasps as he stumbled through the dark. Is that fast or slow pace, do you think? Fast. Anyone agree? Anyone disagree? Or are we all on the same page? Not as much participation today. I would agree. I think it's fast. I think we can tell that through the very quick sentences. He turned and ran, full stop. We got a second thought, a third thought. Too many thoughts all for one paragraph for it to be slow. Okay. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, a poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Down dropped the breeze, the sails dropped down. 'Twas sad as sad could be. And we did speak only to break the silence of the sea. Is that fast or is that slow? I was not that, no. I didn't even know there was that film, to be honest. Um, Slow, slow. Yeah, I would agree. I think it's slow because notice it's all one sentence. It takes its time. There's nowhere, it's not rushing to be anywhere. The focus remains the same. There's no changes. Yeah, slow. There were gardens, courtyards, stone fountains, carved doors, and everywhere the smell of roses. By the God of small things. Any, is that fast or is it slow? Let's make this quick fire. Quick fire, anybody? Slow, I like it. Yeah, slow. And the reason it's slow, again, all one sentence. It's a bit of listing in there. It's got nowhere to be. There's no changing thoughts. Okay, bullets whined past. He threw himself to the ground, fired once, twice, three times, and scrambled forward. All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Maria Remarque. Fast paced, wonderful, absolutely fast paced, as it should be. I know that because it's bullets wind past, full stop, a nice simple sentence. He threw himself to the ground, rolled, fired once, twice, three times. You read it quite quickly. The focus changes quite often. Okay, and then finally, The Lost World by Arthur Conan Doyle. It was a huge creature, 30 feet at least from head to tail, with a neck like a swan and a body covered in dull greenish scales. Its great limbs moved ponderously, each step sending a shiver through the ground. For a long moment, it stood motionless among the reeds, breathing heavily, its small eyes blinkered in the sunlight. Right, someone said, slow, question mark. So is this what's unsure about this? Is it slow? Does anyone agree? Fast or slow? If so, why? Got another person saying slow. Slow. I would agree. I think it's relatively slow. I think there's quite a long, lengthy description of the dinosaur here. Um, yeah. Okay. Moving on then from pace. Let's look at sentence lengths. This is the bit I hate about English, about structure. I think this is the boring part of structure. But in the sort of extract questions, you can name the sentence lengths. You can focus on them as techniques if you want to. So, writers choose how long and short their sentences are to control things like speed, mood, the focus of their writing, the way that they want you to think and feel. So, as a very general sort of premise, I guess, if they use short sentences, is to convey things like tension, urgency, or shock. And if you use long sentences, it's quite descriptive, detailed, almost quite reflective. Um, and I guess I want to focus a little bit here for a second as well. Long sentences aren't necessarily bad or drag out. They do help build atmosphere very well. Think about this dinosaur quote. Like I said, it's nuanced. Just because it's slow doesn't make it calm. In fact, it actually builds tension by being slow. By kind of naming different aspects of the beast, it places focus on that beast and how terrifying it is. So builds towards, yeah, something more negative. Okay. So there's four different types of sentences I'm going to introduce you to. You could name. First and foremost, Minor sentences. This isn't something that not many people tend to have heard of, but you will know of them. So a minor sentence is a shorter sentence that is not complete. It may lack a subject, verb, or both, but it does still convey meaning. And I'll show you some examples on the next slide. Now, the reason we'd use an incomplete sentence is pace. It heightens the tension. Often reflects characters' thoughts and feelings, and puts emphasis on those thoughts and feelings. Um, yeah, replicates realistic speech as well. Now, as an effect on the reader, if there's tension created, then a reader is going to feel quite tense, quite uneasy, quite fearful. Um, all those sort of high impact emotions are created by minor sentences. Almost forces the reader into action because, like I said before, if the focus is shifting so rapidly, it almost makes it unescapable for the reader to like stop and breathe. We're kind of forced into the story. If things are happening so quickly, it like drags us along with it, and so we have to face it. And so it becomes inescapable, and therefore we are compelled to read because we're dragged into this urgency, this high impact emotion. And it makes it quite intense and suspenseful, which can be quite a good thing. Sometimes it does imitate a character's internal conflict, the shock they feel, and therefore, as a reader, we're made to understand it as well. So, some examples, I've put quite a few on here. As you can tell, minor sentences are often one or two words. So, for example, stop, exclamation mark. It's an incomplete sentence, it doesn't have a verb or a subject, but it still makes sense, often conveying things like urgency. Um, thanks, Naya, I appreciate that. Um, we'll discuss it on Saturday. I didn't see you last Saturday. We'll discuss it last Saturday though. Anyway, so yeah, things like alone, full stop. Again, is an incomplete sentence, but it conveys so much rich detail. If you think about the connotations of alone, you think about being lonely, being isolated, almost encouraging reflection. So just having a single word can build so much meaning. So minor sentences are never to be laughed at because they're very rich and they give sometimes more than things like complex sentences. Things like faster, full stop, conveys urgency, pace. Darkness, full stop, conveys fear, mystery. I guess the key to minor sentences is about thinking about the connotations of the words themselves. What do they suggest? Is the writer trying to tell us? Blood, full stop. Well, that's danger. That's ominous. It's macabre. Cold, full stop. We might associate it with discomfort, fear, atmosphere. So minor sentences are either one or two words. And if they're used very much purposefully. Okay. You might also pick out simple sentences. Thanks. No, I did not lie. I did go on holiday. A simple sentences then. A simple sentence is a sentence that contains one main idea. It usually has a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. So we tend to use simple sentences for things like facts, direct thoughts, feelings of the characters, and very similar to minor sentences. We do this for pacing reasons. By having a fact or a statement, it gets across something quite quickly, almost building tension, and is there to emphasize certain things. The sort of lovely thing about a simple sentence is it gets a point across, and as a reader, we learn something quite quickly. For example, like she ran, is a fact. The night was dark is a fact. The wind tore through the trees. He could not move. Everything went quiet. Dark clouds covered the sky. Their eyes locked. They're all simple sentences because they're factual bits of information. And again, they each convey something slightly different, which tells us something. So you might want to pick out the simple sentences. Compound sentences. This is one up now from our simple sentences. A compound is when you join two clauses with a connective or a conjunction. So things like and, but, so, yet. Um, Examples would be something like she wanted to stay, but he had already gone. The sun was setting, and the birds flew home. He ran as fast as he could, yet he couldn't catch her. So, two separate clauses that may or may not make sense by themselves, connected with a connective. And the reason we do this is it tends to slow down the pace a little bit, which we said kind of gives reflective time, calmness, can be somewhat ominous. But sometimes it might be as simple as it simply links ideas together, gives a more complete story, helps us understand more about character. Now, I did say that minor and short sentences can hold more meaning, but sometimes compound sentences can be just as meaningful because they might tell us literally things, whereas minor and simple sentences kind of rely on inference a little bit, whereas compound, they're good for just telling the reader something. Okay, so for example, allows us to see relationships between ideas, creates a balance or contrast. They're a lot more literal than, say, a minor or simple sentence would be. And then finally, we got our complex sentences. You've been stalking me too much now. Complex sentences contains one main idea and one more additional idea. Um, so we tend to get these things called subordinate clauses in complex sentences. So we tend to have one main clause that makes sense by itself, followed by a separate clause that wouldn't make sense by itself. So we call this the minor part that makes sense. Sorry, the main clause makes sense by itself, and then a minor clause doesn't make sense by itself. So, for example, or rather, let's go over this first. Why would we do this? Well, it adds detail, description, things like that. Helps to slow the pace a little bit, therefore making, again, more reflective. It makes the writing layered. It gives us detail. It tells us things that we can learn from the text. Um, yeah, so the effects on the reader will be things like depth in the text, slowing the pace, suspense, making the ideas layered and connected. So an example here from Hard Times, a novel by Charles Dickens. I want you to think a little bit about the complex sentences used in this text. Let's read it. Um, so it was a town of machinery and tall chimneys, out of which interminable serpents of smoke trailed themselves for ever and ever and never got uncoiled. It had a black canal in it, and a river that ran purple with ill-smelling dye, arid vast piles of building full of windows where there was a rattling and a trembling all day long, and where the piston of the steam engine worked monotonously up and down, like the head of an elephant in a state of melancholy madness. Well, the complex nature of that paragraph tells us a lot about the text. It's used to describe the industrial town. The high level of detail there gives us quite a vivid image. And I've used this example for a reason because it's really good to use complex sentences to create a very vivid set of imagery. And almost in a way that builds upon itself. So we start off by adding so many details that are all interconnected in one sentence. It just builds and builds and builds, almost creating, in this example, quite a claustrophobic and unsettling atmosphere. Um, yeah, it's quite a claustrophobic and unsettling atmosphere because it's building on itself. Therefore, the feeling evoked reflects the physical conditions of the town. You're made to feel dirty and uncomfortable, like the town. So, complex sentences can be very useful in description because by creating that vivid imagery, it reflects what we are supposed to feel as the reader, which is grimy and uncomfortable. And by not giving the reader a break between sentences, it creates this building effect as it's almost every bit of description gets worse and worse and worse until it feels almost overwhelming as a reader, if that makes sense. Let's have a look. Meaning of melancholy, basically sadness. It's like a reflective sadness if you're quite melancholic. Um, Yeah, basically like sad and reflective. So if you ever read Hamlet, Hamlet's a good example of a melancholic character. Okay, right. Interactive, please. I know you've been a bit quiet today, but which sentence is which? I just want to get practice about picking these out. Which sentence is which? The sea lapped softly against the shore. What kind of sentence is that? Is it minor, simple, um, complex, or compound? Any ideas? Any ideas, guys? I think we're getting a bit off track in the chat. I'll show you this one. It's simple. The reason it's simple is it's factual information. There's no subordinate clause, there's no conjunction between the sentence. It's a simple statement of fact. The sea lapped against the shore. Okay. The footsteps grew louder behind him, or sorry, grew behind him, grew louder, sorry. Is that minor, simple, complex, or compound? Um, on Saturday, we will be doing, that's an excellent question. Maths? I don't know if I'm Anyway, we're getting off track. We're getting off track. What is the sentence? Is it minor, simple, compound, or complex? Don't make me do all the work, guys. Come on. My Key Stage 3 are so invested. You guys, come on. All right, give you it then. Simple. It's a bit of statement of fact. Um, Although it was raining, she continued to walk home. Is that minor, simple, compound, or complex? But don't ask Natalie to answer. You can't. This is supposed to be an interactive. What is going on in this show? Right, I'll give you them. Right, although it was raining, she continued to walk home. It's complex. The reason it's complex is because it's got two different clauses that would not make sense, or rather, one that wouldn't make sense by itself, one that does. She continued to walk home does make sense by itself. Although it was raining, does not make sense by itself. Um, Compound for the next one. She wanted to stay, but he had gone. There's a connective there. Alone, full stop. It's minor. It's a single word. He waited for a long time. Simple. It's a statement of fact. While the sun set, the sky turned orange and pink. It's complex because that makes sense by itself. That does not. And the wind tore through the trees and the leaves scattered across the yard. It's compound because there's a connective in between. Okay. So, thinking about the effect on the reader then. Again, I mean, I was more hopeful today there would be a bit more interaction. So I've input this one as an exercise as well, which I'm gonna attempt to ask you all, please interact, because this is supposed to help you as well as it is. I prepared this for you guys, not for me to sit and tell you. So, thinking about the effect on the reader, then, I've included a sentence for each of the four sentence types minor, simple, compound, complex. I want us to think about how each of these things affects the reader. So, firstly, infamy for exclamation mark from Tales and Stories by Mary Shelley. What can we infer about the effect on the reader? How does it make you feel? If something is, if it's infamy, it's a wicked act. It's something that's horrible. It's something that's mean. So someone is shouting at somebody that they've done a wicked thing, basically. What does that make us feel about the characters? Is there any atmosphere that's created there, do you think? How do you think that character's feeling? What about the tone that they might be saying it with? Anyone have any ideas? There's no wrong answers. Okay, I'll tell you. I think the tone there is definitely one of annoyance and anger. Um, yeah, because they're shouting infamy is a wicked act. So the atmosphere is almost quite ominous and quite mysterious because you're wanting to know why they're shouting and what they've done. So it kind of draws you into the story that way. Um, the coffin was empty by Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's a simple sentence, but it creates quite an ominous atmosphere. Imagine if you were in Dracula's castle and you walked into the room where there's all the coffins, where the vampires sleep, and it's empty. You'd be quite worried, you'd be quite afraid. And so for a reader, that creates quite a unsettling feeling of just like, oh my God, what's going on? Like you'd be quite disorientated and off balance by that. So it said create suspense because nobody expects it to move. Yeah, suspenseful. You'd be very, um, yeah, you'd be very unsettled by something like that. So that simple fact is proof enough that simple sentences hold so much value because so much can be got from that. The ominous feeling, the unsettling feeling that it makes the reader feel. Um, the questions that it poses. Thank you, appreciate that. The night was cold and still, and the wind whispered through the trees. By The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. So we've got a compound sentence because we've got a connective there. How does that make us feel, or can we understand anything from that? I would say, again, a relatively ominous sentence of sort of mystery and suspense. And I guess, and I guess the if we're focusing on the sentence types about the compound nature of this sentence, by having that connective, it builds. So the writer could have just said, the night was cold and still, full stop. But they didn't. They added on the extra bits. And by adding it on, it's what I was saying before about building, about, they could have just said cold and still, and you've got something from it. But by the fact they're building onto this, to that feeling of like ominousness and the eerie atmosphere, it makes it more intense by having that extra build. Okay, number four. The sun dipping below the horizon and setting the clouds, aflame with streaks of crimson and gold, casts long shadows across the deserted streets. Bleak House by Charles Dickens. Now, again, I think that's relatively eerie in itself. Um, this complex sentence again give this idea of building vivid imagery. That we start with a focus on the sun. The loss of the sun builds, I guess, this idea of dipping below the horizon is almost quite a weird way of describing it. The clouds being aflame on fire, streaks of crimson and gold, the long shadows, all of that builds a very intense mystery and sort of like atmosphere and vivid description. Um, yeah. Right. For the last couple of minutes, then, I'm going to very, very quickly attempt to run over these next four, and then we will leave everything else till next session. So we looked at the sentence lengths. You can also get four different sentence types. Um, One of them is declarative. If you get a declarative sentence, it's a factual question, a factual sentence. It's something that is like a statement of fact, an opinion, or an idea. It gives you information. So, for example, the sky was dark and stormy. It's a fact. She loved reading novels every evening. A fact. Um, these are the least interesting sentences, in my opinion. They give you the information rather than let you infer it. But again, we can learn a lot from them. They can slow and control the pace. They help the reader understand things about the character or the scene, and just generally provide clarity. Clarity is like how clear something is. Imperative, on the other hand, are things like commands or instructions. So often directed at the reader or a character. So, for example, run for your life. You'd be telling the character to do that. Look behind you. It's an instruction. Um, and that's important for our pacing and what it conveys. Because again, it gives urgency, almost immediacy. And with immediacy comes suspense. fear, tension. So imperative sentences kind of go hand in hand with with a fast pace because they convey similar things about urgency and fear, and therefore make the reader feel quite unsettled. Exclamatory sentences are things with an exclamation mark, so we tend to use them for strong emotions, surprise, that sort of thing. For example, what a beautiful sunset, or I can't believe you did that. The reason we would use them is to convey those strong emotions. Um, so convey strong feelings, create emphasis, and can increase tension or intensity, affecting the pace of the text, essentially. So again, we can learn a lot from especially dialogue exclamatory sentences, because that tells us a lot about how a character is feeling and thinking. Okay, and then finally we get interrogative sentences. So these are our questions. So for example, where are you going? Why did he leave so suddenly? These are interesting in their effect on the reader because if you ask somebody a question, psychologically, it encourages somebody to answer. So if you ask a reader a question, like a rhetorical question, it encourages the reader to think about things. It prompts curiosity, prompts reflection, therefore creating suspense and tension. And above all, it makes the reader think about character, the situation and the story itself. So yeah, interrogative sentences. Very, very useful. Right. Okay, then we will stop there. Next week, we're going to continue looking at the rest of extract questions, things you can link. Because so far, I've given you all the terminology. And we'll look at Peter paragraphs and how to structure an answer to an extract question, along with other terms. And we'll link it back to the effect on the reader so that we can get a good explanation going for an exam. Um, right. I'm going to stay around for a couple of minutes in case anybody wants to ask me any serious questions about English. Otherwise, have a nice week, guys. I'll see some of you this week, and otherwise, I'll let you go. Yeah, you know why I said serious. Glad you enjoyed that one. It's a good one, wasn't it? Right. I had a Frankenstein essay. Could I type it out and send it to you for marking? Because I don't think we get our mark back. I'm actually not supposed to take schoolwork, but if you send it to Mr. Siddiqui and ask, he might agree for me to mark it. If you're not going to get a mark back, then I think that's fine. Justify it. Ask him. I'm sure I'll be fine. I don't mind doing it. I don't mind marking it. I'm always happy to do that. Okay, right. If no one's got any other questions, I will let you all go. Bro, what is happening in the chat today? You are literally free to go. You guys enjoy. I feel like we don't do that just because of the chaotic nature of that. Like I feel like that would not go well. I would very much appreciate verbal participation. Um, but I feel like I mean you see in the chat what this can get like. Imagine letting people open up their mics. Well, you're free to go. I'm staying around to answer questions. I'm assuming I'll see you on Saturday. Right, cool. I'll let you all go then. Enjoy. Have a nice evening. Have a nice week. Saturday is just my teaching day. I thought you were gonna be one of my students. My bad. Right, see you on Saturday night.